Another edition here of We Talk Fantasy, Gozilla Media's fantasy football podcast. Ray, Chet Davis, Goz here with you. We're not going to mess around because people have been waiting to hear the member of the Bills Mafia talk about what didn't result in a victory last night. And not so much about your Bills, but I think what we watched may have been the start of an all-time great fantasy football season on the way. We know you love your Bills, but I feel like in the fantasy world, last night was more about Derrick Henry and his performance.
There was a disgusting stat posted, I think it was in the fourth quarter, about how strong Henry gets. First quarter, his yard per carry is like 2.4. Then it's like 3.8. Then it's like 4.6. Then the fourth quarter, it's like a wild 6.8. I mean, the craziest part about Henry right now is I think he had 3 catches that game. It's funny, too, because you don't see him out there on third down because they always throw in the backup Nichols, or I think it's Nichols. But the dude caught a couple passes, and if think about it this way, if they decided to involve Derrick Henry in the passing game and you got him going on a swing route or a screen, you want a corner or a safety coming up and stopping that? I mean, I agree with you. He's having an insane year. He's on pace to beat what's his name's record for Denver for the most rushing yards, I think it was in 3 years or something like that. I mean, you got to give him a lot of credit. He is crushing it. He has just been an absolute beast after week 1 where everybody saw what Tennessee's offense looked like and was like, oh no. And then he comes out just throwing absolute haymakers. So an insane year. Nothing to worry about with Derrick Henry. Even with, I mean, obviously the Titans showed up last night from an offensive side, but even with the offensive woes across the board, Derrick Henry, like we talked about last week, is the one bright shining star.
He's unbelievable. I wrote it in my script today on CBS 6, shameless plug.
Nice.
He's in a league of his own. He really is, because we don't see the workload like that anymore in the NFL, and it's been consistent for a few years now, and it doesn't seem to faze him. He somehow doesn't get hurt, and I was trying to figure out how, because he's such a big guy. He's so powerful. But if you guys think back when you're watching Derrick Henry games, does he ever really get in violent collisions? It's almost like he really knows how to use his pads. And like, if he knows it's not going to, he has a crazy stiff arm. We've seen that. I mean, the Bills have been victim of that too many times. But it's not like he throws himself in danger. It's not like it's like a big blow up and he lunges himself into, no, he if he knows it's not going to go somewhere, he kind of just like gracefully falls to the ground. And then he waits for that moment to break off that 76-yard. He gets that perfect hole and then gone. But like, think about it, guys. We don't really see him get blown up. And maybe that's how he's able to do this. He's just really smart about how he takes on the contact and doesn't put himself in situations where his knee's getting bent in a weird way. I don't know how he does it, because it's been this way since high school. He got overworked. He got overworked in college. He's getting overworked in the NFL, and it doesn't matter. He's the only guy that can sustain that.
And back to those high school and college things you just mentioned, those are historic numbers he put up at both those levels. You go look at the Derrick Henry high school numbers. He's arguably the greatest high school running back ever in the history of the United States of America. He smashed a lot of Mike Hart's records, who were incredible numbers to even put up in high school. College, he wins the Heisman Trophy in 2015. Some would argue McCaffrey should have won it, but Henry won the award. And his entire career, he has felt underrated both as a player in the league and in fantasy football. Think about this. We gave our preview back in the summer about the top running backs. And we talked about where guys like Saquon and McCaffrey and Zeke and everybody ranked. But when we think back, why was it never a slam dunk for Henry this season? McCaffrey has been hurt. Saquon's been hurt. Zeke wasn't scoring enough touchdowns. Dalvin Cook got hurt. Like Chet just said, Henry never gets hurt. And I can feel like him getting hurt is the next game. We roll back the tape, right? But when we talk about a fantasy perspective, a numbers perspective, he is not just running away with it, but like Kyle just said, Terrell Davis is in his sights, a 2,000-yard season. And I shared with you guys about he's got more touchdowns now than the entire Jets. The whole offense, the whole team. So if the fantasy MVP as fun as Mahomes is and Josh Allen, I don't think it's even close for the fantasy MVP. It's Derrick Henry. And we might be talking LaDainian Tomlinson, Peyton Manning, those all-time great fantasy seasons, because of that one additional regular season game in your fantasy football schedule, Henry's in the conversation now as pacing for an all-time great season in the history of fantasy football.
It really is. And he's on that pace. But you guys are going to think I'm crazy. I'm still okay not taking him number one. I know it sounds crazy. And now that we've seen this start, he's clearly RB1. But here's my defense against it. And Kyle talked about it. Yes, he had 2 receptions last night. That's like his average is 2 to 3 receptions a game. And they're not, they're usually those little screens they try to like change up. It's like essentially a run. He's not a route runner. He's a guy, if they're going to throw to him, it's going to be a screen, and it doesn't happen very often. So if you're in half-point PPR or full-point PPR, he falls behind a little bit. It doesn't matter with how many touchdowns he scores. He's still RB1. The reason that McCaffrey went number one is because when healthy, his floor is higher than Derrick Henry because of the receptions. It's like a cheat code. When you get 8 receptions a game, it just gives you a higher start. The touchdown reception has not hit Derrick Henry. I don't know if it ever will. The guy has 3 touchdowns in a game in 3 times in his last 5 games. That's ridiculous. But he doesn't have the pass catching of CMC. And the reason I like Dalvin Cook still ahead of Derrick Henry is Alexander Mattison. You have a bona fide RB1 on your bench as a handcuff if Dalvin gets hurt. If Henry gets hurt, I have no idea what you have. Your season might be over. Dalvin goes down, it is literally a plug in, and you're going to lose maybe 5 points per game, but you're still going to get 15 to 20. And that is so rare to have a handcuff that's that good. So that's the reason why I still put Derrick Henry. It's crazy. Obviously, I wish he was on my team, but I'm still okay with how the draft went. I think I had him at 4. He's definitely better than Alvin Kamara this year, no doubt about it. But I'm still okay with the other 2.
I was trying to remember where I ranked Henry, and I can't remember. I think I had him at 3. I didn't have CMC. I'm pretty sure I went Chubb 1. That was really high.
I think you went Dalvin.
Did I go Dalvin, CMC, Henry? Yeah. So, but like we talked about, I mean, when you look at it now, it's clear cut number 1 RB1. But I still don't think you're, regardless of who you choose in that top 5 running back this year, next year, the year after, it's going to be those 5 guys, and it's not going to be a wrong choice. So even if you didn't grab Derrick Henry, I still don't think you made a wrong choice if you grabbed CMC instead of Henry or Dalvin Cook instead of Henry. Or Kamara. There's really no I lost. No, you didn't. You still got a back that is going to generate 20 to 30 touches a game. It's just Henry might, keyword might, have some more upside. And then what does Henry's value look like if the passing game is on? Ryan Tannehill looked like shit and has looked bad all year. If that passing game is on, is Henry still getting these touchdowns? Probably not. He's still super valuable from a rushing standpoint, but he loses probably a touchdown a game. So you got to think about it that way too.
For perspective as well, for those wondering where he went in the Gozilla Media Fantasy Football League, he did go to Henry. He went to Sean Martin, M Across the Board podcast, Just Win Baby, who just destroyed me this week. That's my matchup. I get to play against Derrick Henry in the Gozilla Media League. And also, we'd like to point out that there's a certain person sitting atop the standings right now at 6-0. That is Mr. Chet Davis, who is sitting atop right now, waiting for that Belts by Dan belt to maybe be hanging in the CBS 6 studio for a year potentially.
Let's go. And interestingly enough, I thought I was getting Derrick Henry. Because that was the more common. He was in that 3 to 4 range. And then there was that big curveball that was thrown in our draft where Derrick Henry went 2. That guy looks like a genius, but I'm also thrilled to have Dalvin for that exact reason where you have to have a handcuff as good as Alexander Mattison. I picked him way earlier than you normally would as a handcuff, and he has saved me in multiple weeks with Dalvin Cook being injured. We're now back in the lineup.
And now to add that as well, Kyle and I remember this. Our guy Tom at Johnstone Supply in Troy is a huge Titan fan, so he thinks he's getting Derrick Henry. He's all, what do you mean? Who took? He's sitting in 8th place right now, and I think it's a perfect time. We're going to go to this a little bit earlier than usual. The Johnstone Supply in Troy mailbag. Got a lot of questions about bye weeks, and it's going to be a lot of the conversation here on how to handle this. Don't forget about Johnstone Supply in Troy. When you're listening to this, we're getting down to the final days of when you can be a part of the first ever Gozilla Media bus trip. We're heading to Albany. Maybe Chet shooting the game. Chet, can we yell at you from the sidelines? The Gozilla Media. Or is it Gardner on the sideline shooting this weekend? Do you even know?
I don't work on weekends anymore.
Look at that.
I've graduated.
That's a boss move right there.
Yeah.
Well, you will not see Chet, but the bus will be going. Sign up GozillaMedia.com, and don't forget, the fall is here. Colder weather is here. Make sure your house is heated properly. Stop into 6th Avenue. Some people don't know how to heat up their home or what they have to do. Talk to the experts there, Tom and Kev and James, the people that want to work with you to help you. We love those guys. Love doing our live show there for Levac and Goz. Johnstone Supply in Troy. For more information, GozillaMedia.com, or head to our YouTube site and check out all that info on our ticker. Ben P. I believe Ben P is a Cleveland Brown fan with this question. Guys, my team has a lot of injuries. Is it worth picking up Case Keenum for the future?
Huh?
I kind of want to go first on this, the Case Keenum thing. Okay, so for those who haven't kept tabs of this, Odell Beckham Jr. has dealt with injuries. Jarvis Landry has dealt with injuries. Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, and when we're recording this, Baker Mayfield is still playing. Now, Baker Mayfield re-aggravated his labrum injury to his non-throwing shoulder. For those who have had that injury, once in a while I like to drop that. I had it. It's not going to get better. It's already popped out. It's already done. He's not going to get better this season. This is the best that you're likely going to get out of Baker Mayfield. With the Browns being so bad, why not? I mean, if you're in a 1 QB league and you think Keenum's just going to throw the ball and he's going to be your waiver wire hit in a few weeks, if you think 1 week he's just going to outplay somebody, have him sit on your bench. Maybe he's going to be in aggressive games come December, an all-time great quarterback statistically in college at Houston. If Cleveland is going to fight with Cincinnati, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh for those final spots in the playoffs, why not? You know what, Ben? You're already probably a Cleveland fan if you ask this most random fantasy question. I say if you've got a quarterback you're not sure about for the rest of the month, 6 weeks, take a flyer on Case Keenum if your quarterbacks are sitting in that 18 to 30 range.
That's a stretch and a half, in my opinion. I'm not. Do we know? Is he in our Yahoo league?
I believe he is still available. Yes.
No. Is this question coming from our
No.
We don't know the size of the league. It would have to be either a 2-quarterback league for me to think about doing that, or it would have to be a big freaking league, because even let's just use our league for example, 14 teams. If I go on the waiver right now, I think Geno Smith is still sitting there. Not that Geno Smith looked great by any means. He played against the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the best defenses in football, if not the best defense in football. So it wasn't going to be great. Jameis Winston, this is 14 teams. You have Jameis, Tua, Mac Jones, Danny Dimes with his scrambled eggs as a brain, Zach Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, Justin Fields. Those guys are starters. You know that they're going to be under center on Sunday. So it would have to be a dire situation for me to take a backup who's not the starter yet on a team that's having trouble throwing the ball. That's a run-first team. It just, you'd have to be – if you got that right, I would start texting that person every day and be like, what's going to happen? Because you obviously have a crystal ball that you're using for fantasy football.
I would grab him if you hear he's going to start, because I think the injuries that are racking up over there do make a statement. I mean, this week it's going to be either Demetric Felton or Dearness Johnson starting at running back probably. So who knows what that's going to look like. But I think the important part that I want to highlight of the question is with injuries and buys, you cannot afford a roster spot right now for a potential flyer of Case Keenum. There's too much value right now in roster spots because there's injuries left and right. This is the megalodon of bye weeks this week with all power players on bye. If you're looking for it for this week, no, not a chance in hell unless he is named the starter and you have an option to go get him. But just with all the people on buys, the injuries that a pandemic in the NFL like COVID. I mean, you can't touch it. I don't see it as a possible scenario unless he's named it.
If our guy is a big Browns fan, I think the position that's going to benefit the most from this situation, whether it's Baker or whether it's Case Keenum, is the tight ends.
Yep.
I think David Njoku and Austin Hooper are going to continue to get increased production, increased targets. Donovan People-Jones is a one-trick pony. OBJ is not looking the same, and now he's injured. Jarvis Landry, you already mentioned all the guys that are out. And so if they're not going to have that same running game, look for the quick passes to the tight ends. The Joku's had some big breakout plays this year. Austin Hooper's more of a possession guy, red zone threat. Those guys become viable tight ends. Also, is Harrison Bryant still producing? I know I've seen him a couple times on the field, but maybe he's kind of fallen behind after a pretty good rookie year. But I'd keep an eye on the tight ends in Cleveland.
I love both those answers, and I'm just going to flip back to Collins because I think that's maybe what Ben was thinking here. Because like many managers, week 7, some have already begun to wave the white flag, and they're already heading towards week 8 and week 9. See it in November. Ben, if maybe he's making that move because the trade deadline in his league might be close. I have the feeling that's the case for this, which is the topic we have to sit on this week. This is a huge week of how to manage your team. And Chet, I'm going to start with you because you shared a picture, and I believe you shared it to even ESPN's Matthew Berry about what do I do with my roster? So I get it. There's so many variables. So again, if you have questions, hit us up on social media, on Twitter. When we share this, you'll see all of our handles there. We'd love to answer questions on bye week. But Chet, early still here in the week, what are you hoping to do with your strategy for your teams? And by the way, you've got a lot of them you've got to deal with this week.
Let's just go through. I'm gonna give credit where credit is due to Field Yates for putting this all in one tweet. These are the fantasy superstars, if you will, who will not be available this week because they're on bye. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Dak Prescott, Zeke, Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, James Robinson, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, Deontay Johnson, and Najee Harris.
God.
No one is going unaffected by this week. Like
You didn't even mention Justin Herbert.
I did too.
Oh, did you? I missed Herbert.
You're in your Doritos.
I understand there's a lot of names there. It's ridiculous. And it just so happens that a lot of these big, powerful offenses are off at the same time. And so it does create that question of what do you do? How do you handle it? You know going into a season that there's going to be bye weeks where you have to fill in guys, and hopefully some of those dart throws at the end of your draft have stuck and you might feel confident. If you do have the big replacement, I know Kyle has a pretty big one that he has to deal with. You try to just hope and pray on that waiver wire that you're reading matchups and you're hoping that someone falls into the end zone. But here's my question for you guys. I'm going to answer your question with a question. Because this is, as Kyle said, the megalodon of bye weeks, do you just take an L if it's gotten to a point where it's so bad you don't want to blow up your team? And I mean that where there are some rosters out there where they're going to have to drop significant fantasy performers because they can't actually fill a lineup without doing it. So what I'm saying is, you know what? If you're in a good position, let's say you're in first place, second place, you feel good about where your team is. Instead of having to drop maybe your flex player or having to drop a quarterback who's been doing really well, do you just say, you know what? I'll be back next week. I'd rather keep my team together that I love as opposed to dropping guys, letting another team poach my guys on bye while I just pray to eke out a win. What do you think?
So I can answer that to start, guys. I mean, I'm literally playing you, Chet, where I'm at that point where I'm looking at my roster: Josh Allen, Austin Eckler, Tyler Bass, James Robinson, Emmanuel Sanders, all on bye. I also do not want to drop my Cowboys defense because they've been a solid defense and they've got a favorable schedule. So I'm looking at my lineup and I'm going, who do I drop? I'm not going to make any drastic, crazy moves. If that means I have the only person right now I'm looking at dropping is Devin Singletary. And I still have 3 spots to fill. So if I don't find a move that I'm willing to make, it is what it is. I'm gonna chalk up this week as an L. I have no concerns with my team going forward. But this week specifically, I'm not just filling my roster if my bench is where I want my bench to be. If that makes sense.
Yeah, especially for newer leagues too. And if you know your buddies in your leagues, you might even want to send I call it a courtesy text like, hey, I did update my roster. I'm not the guy in the league who's just like mailing it. I have nothing. My hand, if this was a game of poker, it'd be like fold. I'm out. Like you can't fold in fantasy. It's as simple as you don't sacrifice 1 for 17. Like
Exactly.
you said, Chet, you cannot give up your season because you want to beat somebody. And here's the other thing. Like if you die, we're going to get to the waiver wire here in a second. So you're going to go kind of like scrap heaping into the waiver wire to hope to what? Maybe lose by 30? Like it's not even worth blowing it up. Yeah.
You have to look in the mirror and be like, do I have a chance? Am I in a situation where I think getting into the playoffs is going to come down to one win? That's where you just have to realize, am I good enough to make it as is and take one L here and then rack off 5 wins in a row? That's where you just have to look in the mirror and figure out where your team is at.
It is the biggest thing I think I've changed as a fantasy football owner over the last 10 years. And I used to be one of those guys who really cared about the bye weeks because I thought, okay, if I have too many guys on week 7 or vice versa, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I got to make sure I spread this out, or if I'm drafting a running back, I stopped caring about bye weeks. I'm like, look, my goal is to draft the best team. Eventually, these guys are not going to play one week or multiple weeks if they get injured. There's no point of sacrificing my team thinking about what can happen. It's just too many. Somebody at MIT would have to figure out that. That's why I've changed. I'm like, just draft the best team. You're going to deal with, everybody else has to deal with the same thing you have to deal with.
The only time in a draft that I pay attention to it is when I know it's a bench player. Like, I'm not going to draft a second quarterback that has the same bye as my starter. If there's 3 guys that are in the same kind of like, I think they could be good, I'm taking the guy where the bye week makes sense. And so that's where, you don't want to have a whole bench, like your whole starting lineup is on a bye, and then you look at your bench and your whole bench is on a bye. So then you're like, why did I hold on to these guys if I can never play them in these situations? But for starters, I'm with you. I don't even pay attention to it. If all my starting running backs are on bye, so be it. I'll figure it out. But don't base your entire draft around, I have to make sure my buys are scattered. No, worry about it on your bench.
Also, same thing with trades too. I know we're talking a lot about making moves. Don't trade for a bunch of guys for almost a 1-week rental. That is not the purpose of this week either. Don't sacrifice and blow up your roster. Although some people are listening to this and they might be sitting at 2-4.
Right.
And that might be like, that's the problem. Like if you're at 2-4 and you hit this, I mean, if you do a league where you trade 2022 picks, you can talk about that type of move, but I don't know if you make it. Yeah.
To that point, and I think would be the fun part of fantasy. That is going to be the fun part of fantasy football. We're in Buymageddon, like just everything. You're going to see a lot of moves for people who are maybe panicking a little bit. Keep your eye on Wednesday morning and see who got dropped. If you can sacrifice a little bit, go scoop up some of those guys without having to use your waiver prior. Like grab them if you can. See what happens and just put claim after claim after claim in and redo your roster. This week is going to be that perfect week where somebody's going to drop Emmanuel Sanders. Go get him if he's on the waiver wire. If you're in a position where you don't have a lot of buys week, do not put a claim in and wait until the rerun so that you can get somebody who drops like an Emmanuel Sanders or a Zach Moss or a Kirk Cousins or somebody along those lines.
I feel like this comment's going to add stress to managers. You know how like the final week, if you're fighting for a playoff spot, you'll relive the one catch or one run, or if you miss a playoff win, you always remember the final moments of your fantasy season. No one really reflects on these type of weeks like, oh, if I had made this move. You know what? Don't, because that's way too stressful. Do not look back at Buymageddon as the reason you missed the playoffs. Think about it a different way, because it's just too difficult to think your whole season should have sat on week 7. You know what? Let's transition into the waiver wire, because Kyle mentioned a lot of people might just be inexperienced, maybe fantasy players, and make some dumb moves in your league this week. But before we get to some of those names to look out for, I want to tell you about our friends over at Mohawk Honda. Selection is king at Mohawk Honda. Stop in and find the ride that you're looking for, whether it's pre-owned or new. And we're happy to say Gozilla Media will be broadcasting live this Friday from 3 to 4:30 at Mohawk Honda. So happy to be back to say what's up to everybody, from Greg Johnson to Cam McKenna. I was texting Cam today. My parents were trying to find a vehicle. They say whatever it takes, we're going to get that car. I like the attitude right here. Go find a new vehicle. Mohawk Honda has that selection. Whether you're listening in Syracuse, upstate New York, wherever it might be, Mohawk Honda is worth the drive to Glenville, Freeman's Bridge Road. Stop in, say hello to the staff. Ask for the VIP man. Ask for hot sauce. People that you can trust are the car buying experience. I know from experience. My pilot right out there. Shot my guy John text. My maintenance light is on, John. I don't know why. Please help me. If you're one of those people, stop in a Mohawk Honda, where they always go out of their way to please you. All right, Kyle, waiver wire. For those people who are desperate and dying for some moves. God, we've already talked about Case Keenum and some players we don't even know the names of on some of these teams. anybody with true potential breakout and steal a victory type players out there?
No.
No. The answer is no, right?
I mean, this is going to be a really important bye week for a lot of people. So I tried to throw together anybody that's under 60% rostered in leagues, and I got the highest was a 55%er. So I'll start off with my most favorite pickup, and I mentioned him last week. Go get Ricky Seals-Jones. He is a viable flex play. He is not as athletic as Logan Thomas, but that offense feeds tight ends. So he is rostered 29% of leagues. If he's available for you, go get him. I definitely think he's worth a waiver claim. Looking at the running backs, my biggest one is J.D. McKissick, 55% owned. You've got some injury concerns with Gibson. I guess his shin, as he's saying, is the pain tolerance portion. But McKissick's going to get some touches this week because personally, I think they're going to get behind and they're going to have to throw the ball. They've shown that Gibson isn't in there for pass plays. It's all McKissick on the pass plays. So if you have a chance to grab McKissick, definitely get him. When you look at the Cleveland matchups, right now it looks like it's leaning towards Dearness Johnson, and then it's Demetric Felton. They play Denver. If you need a bye week running back, I don't see a bad play in getting. I would probably try to get Dearness Johnson. Demetric Felton, I think, is going to be the backup. So neither of them they're barely rostered in 5% or under. So definitely worth a waiver wire them, especially on By McGinnon. For wide receivers, number one wide receiver is definitely Tim Patrick. Teddy loves him some Tim Patrick. Caught another touchdown this past week. Loved him sitting on my bench. And honestly, him and Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton have been a nice little combo. So look for them to keep that up in Cleveland. We'll see what the injuries shake out to be. But that Cleveland run defense is very strong. So I'm thinking Teddy's going to have to put up the ball, which leads me to him being the quarterback for me. Teddy Bridgewater, I think, is the number one quarterback on the wire right now. He's only rostered in 21% of leagues. So he hasn't looked terrible, but he also hasn't looked great. Do not expect a 25, 30-point game. He will get you between 18 to 20 points. So he will be a very serviceable bye week quarterback. In the last two that I've got, both wide receivers, if you're looking for the home run play this week while you're on a bye, it's going to be Donovan Peoples-Jones. He only does big plays. He's not a consistent threat. You saw the Hail Mary that he ended up catching this week. I think he had another big play 2 weeks ago, which got him over 10 points. So he's going to be your big play threat. If you need a guy that's going to get you a big play, maybe take a gamble at Donovan Peoples-Jones. I don't think he's worth a waiver wire pickup, but he is worth an ad if you can get him without using your roster spot. And then T.Y. Hilton had a nice game coming back. Definitely Wentz looked decent last week. He was throwing the ball around. With T.Y. Hilton come back, again, it's all about if the dude can stay healthy. We know he is actually a weapon when he is healthy. It's just hopefully he doesn't get tackled because he's gonna get hurt. So like I said, not a lot going on this week from the waiver wire standpoint, but I will continue to stress grab Seals-Jones if he's out there for you.
Those last two things at the end, by the way, the Hilton thing I'm going to sit on before we end this episode because there's something interesting about that Colts 49ers matchup. And you mentioned Wentz. I'm going to save my take on that because I like that a lot. The one before that theory you have there about going for the big plays, that is the exact mindset that if you are crushed by bye weeks, that is my best advice. Go get somebody at your waiver wire that you think just has speed and can break a touchdown or is just going to get some monster yardage. That's it. Because that's what you're hoping for, that if you already know you're a big, heavy underdog in your matchup, maybe you're lucky enough and you play in these bonus leagues where a long plus 80-yard play is a bonus, and you all of a sudden put up an 18 or 20-point performance off of somebody off the waiver. That's the way to do it. A lot of those advice are good. I just keep it in my head. I'm like, I wish they had a speedster like the old days of like Deshaun Jackson. No, probably not worth it. Henry Ruggs rostered in enough leagues. Like just somebody, John Ross for the Giants. Just hope somebody just runs a go route. You get an 80-yarder and just play it FanDuel DraftKings style rather than season-long leagues.
Yep.
Check, give the thumbs down, by the way, showing how bad John Ross stinks.
Boo. That's mostly for Giants. Golly. Why did Daniel Jones play in that game? I do not know.
They probably should have taken him off the field. I mean, everybody, the whole team was injured.
How funny is that though that we keep having these like random appearances from former rookies with high expectations? John Ross, Dante Pettis has been getting on the field. And there was another one, it just escaped me. Oh, I think Laquan Treadwell got on the field. I don't even know for which team, but it's like my Sunday ticket, says a name, and I'm like, that guy's still in the league? Where's he been for the last 3 years? But I always think it's funny when those guys that, at one point we thought we were going to be fantasy relevant, we put them on our bench, and they stayed on the bench the entire year. And they stink.
Some people will brag about them being their sleeper. Like he's just not awake yet. He's gonna wake up and be my
Rashad
sleeper.
Penny, one of these days, is going to wake up. Rashad Penny's going to be a thing. Which actually, I'm going to say that. Isn't he actually coming off IR? Something to keep an eye on with their running back situation. Rashad Penny maybe could be something soon.
I'm still waiting for Anthony Gonzalez for the Colts. Remember him at Ohio State? Yeah. Every year he was the sleeper because he was with Peyton Manning.
Isn't he a politician now?
He is. He's an elected official now. Might be Representative Gonzalez now. Once he's done with office, maybe he'll be a sleeper again in fantasy. I tease the Colts thing. I don't want to wait any longer on the Colts thing. Starts and sits this week. I'm looking at Indianapolis and San Francisco. This is my new mindset with certain games. Kyle mentioned Carson Wentz. Here are my two favorite things to do in sports when I go on social media. And if you follow me on Twitter at TomGoz, TomGozz, you see this constantly. I love trashing Texas Longhorn football. It's the best. Is Texas back? I can't get enough of it. Every week, Texas blowing games in the fourth quarter. That stupid gif of Shane Buechele, I think it is, running through like, we're back, baby. Love it every single time. And I love watching Carson Wentz stink because the Philly fans constantly defend him. My guy Bryce over Sports with the Zena T and Made for Philly loves Carson Wentz. I watch him fail. It's great. But as much as I like watching Carson Wentz fail and Texas Longhorn football stinking, Carson Wentz has been awesome. And it feels as if this week is one of these games where Kyle Shanahan and the Niners are coming off a bye. And I told you guys this a few weeks ago. I'm not convinced Trey Lance is good. I have no idea. They got a primetime game coming up here against Niners and Colts. I look at what Carson Wentz has done with T.Y. Hilton, Jonathan Taylor. I said he stunk in the preseason. He had the longest run in Colts history. I love the Colts. I would tell you one of my favorite plays this week is that Carson Wentz right now is listed on Yahoo projections as the 22nd best quarterback. I know the Niners defense is fine coming off a bye. I'll play Carson Wentz. With the mess we just talked about for the bye week, I love Carson Wentz this week against San Francisco.
Do you guys owe an apology? I guess you kind of just made one there, Tom. I know, Kyle, you loved Jonathan Taylor last year, but both of you guys were kind of low on JT coming into this season. My God, has he been great the last couple of weeks?
Please do not overstretch this, but what he's doing in Indianapolis single-handedly carrying that offense in some situations, a little bit Derrick Henry-esque.
Yep. Kind of using that same kind of way. Like he needs to get 20 touches because 2 of them he's going to break. It's like, that's not to keep going back to Derrick Henry, but watching the beginning of that Bills game, they had him contained for 2 series, but it just takes 1. You just got to keep feeding those kind of guys. Like they need to get hit. They need touches, and eventually they're going to find a seam, and they're strong enough to get through the first line of defense and fast enough to blow everybody else out of the water. It's crazy.
It's so wild you brought up Derrick Henry because I was going to bring that back around to Derrick Henry too because, yes, all right, Jonathan Taylor, you've been really good. I'm sorry I did that to you. I would have avoided you with a first-round pick at any spot if I could have. There's nothing but good things to say about Jonathan Taylor so far. But Ryan Tannehill, who we've told you stinks in this podcast and has been terrible, somehow right now Yahoo has Ryan Tannehill as the 7th highest ranked fantasy football quarterback this week. He's got him right around the same numbers as Rodgers and Stafford, only about a point to a point and a half, actually projected to have more points this week than Tom Brady. Now, we could talk about the factor of weather in Chicago. Maybe that's why Brady, we saw what the weather did in that Patriot game, but no to Ryan Tannehill. I know the Chiefs have allowed the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season, that defense. No, just no. Tannehill is not getting back in a lineup till he deserves it. I feel like I'm a parent punishing a child right now. You will get back in my lineup when you earn the respect. You hear me, Tannehill? Right on the bench you go. Because of Derrick Henry, too, though. He's got A.J. Brown. He's got Julio Jones, Kyle. Sit him on the bench.
I actually have Ryan Tannehill as my start this week.
Oh my God.
Yep. Don't get me wrong. Derrick Henry is probably going to feast. He's going to have like 200 yards on the ground this week. But you saw something clicking finally with Ryan Tannehill and AJ Brown in the fourth quarter. Tannehill was 9 for 9 for 108 in that fourth quarter against a strong Bills secondary. Now, when you think about it, Kansas City is going to have to stop the run if they want to hang around in that, which is weird saying, by the way. Should we talk about that for a second? We're sitting here saying, like, in order for the Chiefs to hang around, they're going to have to stop. Like, I think that's a fact, though. Derrick Henry's going to run all over them. But I actually really like Tannehill this week because you're going to have, I think, some big play opportunities with A.J. Brown. I know we said last week that we're not big fans of A.J. Brown, but is Julio going to be healthy? Shocker. A.J. Brown's going to be the man. And then I have another must start in a flex role if you have a tight end. I'm so happy that Mckissick is turning it around, baby. Huge week last week. 9 targets, 8 receptions, 115 yards. 3 out of the 4 weeks above 13 points. Only has 1 touchdown, and we know how lethal Mike can be in the red zone. I know that Miami offense is garbage, but Mike Gesicki is the one reliable weapon next to Jaylen Waddle. There is 0 run game. Tua and that whole offensive scheme has started to say it's going to go to Waddle or it's going to go to Gesicki. So I love Mike Gesicki this week going against Atlanta because I think Atlanta is going to have the ability to throw the ball, which is going to put them up points, which means Miami's going to have to try to keep up. Are they going to be able to? No. But I think Mike Gesicki can have another 100-yard with a touchdown kind of game and get you 20 points in a flex spot if you need it. So Mike Gesicki and Tannehill are my definite starts this week. And he's on a bye this week, but drop him, Laviska Shenault, I'm done.
Shit nuts. Welcome to the club, Kyle. Shit
Get out
nuts.
of here, bud. You're all right. He's all yours, dude.
Shit nuts.
Well, I'm going to take it right up because you mentioned the guy that I love this week is Jaylen Waddle going against the Falcons. Similar reason that Kyle said that that could turn into a shootout. Both defenses haven't played very well. My call on Jaylen Waddle is going to be the first time he has back-to-back double-digit fantasy outputs. Last week went off. 10 receptions on 13 targets, 70 yards, the 2 touchdowns. He's had 2 games this year with 13 targets. Obviously, he has repertoire with Tua. Tua came back, went his way over and over in that London game. Give me some Jaylen Waddle this week. This is like a perfect chance where if you've been waiting on Waddle and now it's your bye week, go for it. Go for it. This is what you've been waiting for. Put Waddle in your lineup. My other love, another guy that Kyle has mentioned, is J.D. McKissick. Whether Antonio Gibson plays or not, if Gibson doesn't play, McKissick becomes a top 15 running back this week, maybe even higher. Even if Gibson is healthy, I like McKissick as a flex play. He's going to get touches. He's like your James White kind of running back. He doesn't have to start, but if he gets those receptions out of the backfield, he's going to have a good floor. If he finds the end zone, you're looking at potentially 20-point week. So I like J.D. McKissick coming off an 8-reception game when Gibson left early with that shin injury. Also had 8 rushes for 45 yards. He's just a good running back. Like, that guy has explosive plays in him. So give me some J.D. McKissick. Those are my 2 loves, McKissick and Waddle.
I love it, guys. A lot of good stuff.
We're gonna. I guess Gaz already crapped on his players.
I did. Tannehill.
More. Yep. Let me take a dump on Dearness Johnson. I'm not buying it. I know, like, he could be making his first career start. If it was against a better matchup, sure. It's a good Broncos team. Von Miller says he's going to kill someone. Like, avoid that. Like, if I'm hearing one of the best defensive players say he's going to commit murder, I don't want any part of it. So I'm not starting Dearness Johnson. If you're desperate and you just need somebody that you know is going to get some touches, sure, maybe he gets you a 1-yard touchdown after PI because a crime has been committed by Von Miller. The other guy that I'm staying away from, whether obviously if he's out, you're not going to play him. If Julio Jones plays, I'm not playing him, even if I have the bye week concerns. Hamstrings, he always seems to have those soft tissue nagging injuries. Even when he didn't have the injury against the Bills, he's just dropping passes. Like, he's not getting open. He's dropping passes we've never seen Julio drop. It's so tough to watch Julio and AJ Green. Even though AJ's actually made some plays, they're just not the same guys anymore. Like they're slow. It's just it's hard to watch the once perennial all-pro guys just be regular dudes on a team. It's so hard to watch, but I'm not in on Julio this week against Kansas City. By the way, surprising, KC is 10th against receivers in fantasy. Very surprised by that.
Interesting, by the way. With Cincinnati, I just mentioned Cincinnati too. I thought about AJ Green. I'm like, you know how I love AJ Green and Julio because they're same age as me. And I'm like, the more and more they fall off, the more and more I'm going to be grabbing a muscle and chasing around Rex. Like, oh man, I feel like Julio in the backyard today. I just don't got it like I used to. Cincinnati's got a good test coming up with Baltimore. You find out if that team is going to be for real in the real NFL world.
If I had to pick a couple people to sit this week, it's going to be the entire Baltimore Ravens running game.
Yeah.
The injury news to Ronnie Staley, I'm interested to see how that plays out for that offensive line. Obviously, Lamar can do magic with his feet. But I think we all can agree that dude is an anchor on any offensive line. He is one of the best in the league. Stay away from them. There's one other thing, and Le'Veon has now been promoted to the 53-man roster. He's no longer on the practice squad. So does Latavius and Bell split touches? I think there's very few people that you trust on that right now. And also, I know a lot of people are saying he's going to break out. He's going to break out. Just continue to hold on Bateman. We saw Lamar go nuts for 400 yards, then come right back down to earth. So let's just chill with all the Lamar in his arm stuff. Let's see what happens. But I'm not buying into any Baltimore running backs this week. And then the other one that I'm a little worried about, and I meant to pull him up just to get more information on him, was DeAndre Swift going up against the Rams. That's got me a little worried. Obviously, he is the only player on that team that has been relatively consistent in terms of a fantasy aspect. TJ Hawkinson has been kind of up and down. But Swift, that defensive line is no joke. I'm not sure how many lanes they're going to be able to get for him this week. So just be cautious. Don't be surprised if he has a bust kind of week, more similar to possibly than Chicago. And also the other alarming stat that I was looking at when I was looking at why I don't like Swift. Do you guys know he doesn't have more than 15 rushes in a game? His highest touches from a carry standpoint is 14. And he is obviously getting a ton of receptions, which is making up for it, but they're just not running the ball. So
no, they are. It's because of Jamal Williams.
Yeah. So that's the other thing. I just stay away. I'd be a little cautious of DeAndre Swift this week.
Yeah, the other thing to add to Swift, too, is it also stinks when the Lions are awful and have to throw the ball in the second half. You'd love the PPR numbers, but, yeah, you got to move that clock. I know they've been a lot of competitive. Poor Dan Campbell's crying in the press conferences. Poor guy.
That's the one thing that actually kind of works in Swift's favor is then they do fall behind. Williams tends to stay on the sideline, and they keep Swift in for the passing plays. And Goff loves to check down. That's what he did in L.A. That's what he does in Detroit. And Swift has that ability to take a quick little swing pass 20, 30 yards. So, yeah, it somehow helps when they're down by a lot because just get Jamal Williams I love that guy. He seems so funny. He is a fantasy nightmare. He did it to Aaron Jones. He's doing it to DeAndre Swift. Just leave us alone, Jamal Williams, please.
Leave us alone. What did we do wrong to you? See, that mindset you just had right there, you guys had a few more starts and sits than me because I looked at my sheet. I'm like, do I really want to brag about Michael Carter for the Jets? I'm like, no, I just told you how bad the Jets offense is. I don't want to talk about that. Do I want to talk about Hunter Renfrow or Henry Ruggs? Kyle did mention Bateman. I had him on my list too. I'm like, all these guys, I'm like, this isn't who you should start. I'm like, okay, it's week 7. Like, this is what's left. This is your bye week. We're giving you hope that when you see an awful name on your roster and thinking, what about my bench? Oh, shoot. That's my bench. Okay, they're out. Good luck out there, guys. It is a strange week. I want to close with this, Chet. I know it's Chet Roulette, and me leading off with Chet Roulette makes 0 sense, but I have to ask. There's no other segment. We need to get more information about Kyle Ray's Cyclone before we close this episode. Kyle, you don't have to do it. You could pay for Cameo if you've got one. Great. Just walk us through. If you're listening on our audio side, Kyle has just gotten up to talk about the young listeners out there that if you've missed it, he's got to share it eventually. this way of chugging a beer I've never seen in my life. I'm the worst. I did some shotguns at a Saratoga Lake Golf Club this past weekend. I'm still not as good as I was back in college. Not good at it at all. I need to learn this method.
Were you good in college once upon a time?
No.
You just like got by, like you were sufficient enough to do it.
I got by in the sense of like everybody's shotgun and they stood behind somebody and like still had a bunch left and like, all right, as long as nobody sees this over here, I think I'll be good.
All right, here we go.
All right, so Kyle, walk us through it for those. Yeah.
Make sure you cover the label.
Walk us through your method here, because I was just saying while you were gone that you and I are larger fellows. I'm not a great shotgunner or speed drinker, but you've developed some method here that young fantasy football managers out might have to learn as their teams either do well or do terrible.
So I can't take full credit of it. I saw it via some gamers learning how to chug. So essentially what you do is you just take any bottle beverage. When you put it in your mouth, you take it, you do one full swirl, and then you whip it real quick one more time around, and it literally creates a cyclone in here, and it's literally like an air pocket that just, if you're listening, I'm sorry, just shoots right down your throat. I ended up doing it this weekend, and by the way, please note that this last one that I did this on Monday night was by far my best ever. And you can see it via the facial expressions that I make, like, "Oh Lord, this is happening."
So that
and usually you're done with your drink in 5 to 6 seconds.
This is incredible for older gamers. Like this is the old fight night knockout punch. If you remember that, the old haymaker button, you're kind of holding down the controller and flicking it. Is what you're telling me? All right.
No. So Kyle, do I start when the bottle gets to the lips? That's when I start the timer.
That's what I was doing. I was stuck between when it hits lips or when I did the second.
All right, guys, I'm gonna give you because
we're gonna get one. All right, I thought he just brought it
out.
up.
Popped it, bud.
Oh yeah. So we're degenerates. So guys, I'm gonna give you. Are you gonna go over under? Oh boy.
The number was 8.
I was gonna say 6.5.
My number was 8, so I'm gonna go over. I'm thinking 8 seconds is my number.
What were you gonna give, Chet?
I put the over at 6. 6 flat. God, going over. I'm gonna go under.
Ooh, that's a lot of pressure.
Don't show him the clock, or else he's gonna spew it all over his. All right, Kyle. Whenever you're ready.
$3,000 computer sitting here. Shit.
Don't tip your tooth out.
Yeah. All right.
If we go on pause for a while, we're gonna know why. All right, here we go. He's swinging it. Wow.
Oh no!
Oh, we got an explosion.
Did it bad.
That's even better.
Nope, did it bad. So what I did was
for those listening on Apple and Spotify, come see this. All right, go ahead, Kyle. Walk us through what went wrong.
The play-by-play. Oh man, I Josh Allen'd it right now. Didn't get my footing. That's unfortunate. Well, looks like I gotta drink a beer.
Go get a new one.
There is no better way to end this episode than what we just watched.
Damn
guys, I think we'll talk to you again next week. Please, if you're listening on Apple and Spotify, watch then. Bye, guys.
Boy.